Hello everyone, my name is Shai Sharon and I'm a certain scientist. Today's video is dedicated to a favorite subject of mine, which is clinical photography. I've been taking clinical pictures since 2014 and started investing in my own professional camera gear in 2016. Everything about clinical photography I learned the hard way on my own, and in today's video I'm going to share everything that I learned. This video will be divided into 3 sections. The first section is titled Photography 101, as in intended for all of you who want to improve their picture taking skills, but without going into all the details. The second section is titled Taking It to the Next Level and is intended for all of you who already know the basics but want to improve their clinical photography skills and go into the professional photography realm. The third and last section will be a walkthrough through my own professional camera gear. So without further ado, let's get to it. Clinical photography, Photography 101, the basics. The process of taking pictures has changed tremendously in recent years. We don't need to carry a dedicated camera anymore because phone cameras are excellent. Most importantly, your phone camera is always there. There is a saying that the best camera is the one you have, so for the most of us, it's the phone camera. The second major change is that we no longer need to print pictures in order to enjoy them. However, having a camera in hand and the fact that ever since there is no film, taking pictures cost us actually nothing, created new challenges. A major challenge is quantity over quality. Most of us have many pictures saved up, which we hardly ever look at. Many of us spray and pray, or in other words, we take multiple pictures without paying attention to details. We hope that one of them will be good enough. The result is usually we have just file folders packed with mediocre pictures. Today, I want to focus on the process of taking great pictures, and I want to focus on both day-to-day life taking pictures and professional clinical picture taking during clinical scenarios. And getting the process right is far more important than having the greatest or most expensive gear. To take great pictures, you need to do 3 things. First, you want to prepare your subject. The second, you want to pay attention to your lighting. And third, you want to be aware of your zoom. Let's elaborate, and we'll start with the subject. So, without a strong subject, your picture will be bland, no matter how good the lighting is or how interesting the background is. So, first, you should position your subject in the center of the frame and clear the surroundings from any clutter, any mess that you have in the background. This will help to focus on your subject and create a more pleasing composition. If you're taking a picture of your family, make them laugh. If you are taking a picture of yourself, instead of taking a selfie, ask a stranger to take a picture for you. That will cause your images to be much more natural, and each selfie will look different because each selfie, or not a selfie, each picture that was taken by a stranger will look a bit different because each and every picture was taken by a different person. In the clinic, there are rules. You want to position your subject in front of a solid color background. It can be white, it can be blue. You want to wipe your instruments. You want to use retractors. You want to use rulers in all your pictures. It takes about 15 seconds to wipe off your instruments, and it makes a huge difference between a great photo that you can present and a mediocre photo that requires you to explain, yeah, please disregard that, and yeah, I tried to take a picture, and this is a dark, what I want to show you is, you really don't want that. Take those 15-20 seconds and make your picture great. This is the clinic scenario and the rules of the subject in the clinic. Let's touch the lighting. The lighting, oh, the lighting. I can't stress it enough. In photography, lighting is everything. Lighting is everything in photography. Proper lighting can make or break your photo. First, you want to use existing lighting whenever it's possible. By existing lighting, first, I mean the sun. The sun is your best friend. And if you can position yourself so the sun is behind you and shed lights on your subject. If using the sun is not an option, you can achieve it by turning up the light, or you can open up curtains if you still have some light outdoors. Natural light will give your pictures an airy feel and make them look much more professional. Your subjects should be positioned accordingly so they are evenly lit, okay, without harsh shadows or hard light on their faces. If it's too dark, and in most cases where clinical pictures are taken, we're dealing with black holes, okay? We're shooting inside a very poorly lit area, you can use a flash. A flash can brighten up a photo and make it look much better compared to taking it without a flash. However, if the flash is not used correctly, it can wash out the colors in a photo and make it look just awful. Besides macro images are images taken from an extremely short distance. The flash should not be pointed directly at your subject. This is extremely important. Instead, the light of the flash should bounce off the ceiling or through a diffuser, if you have a diffuser. In other words, you need to point your lens at your subject and the flash at the ceiling right above your subject. Since phone cameras don't have this capability of separating between the flash angle and the lens angle, I never, ever use a flash with my phone. I rather have a grainy, yellowish, but natural picture taken in the dark than a washed out, flash in your face, unnatural picture. So much about the flash. We'll touch the flash again when we get to the second section of professional photography. Zoom. So there are two kinds of zoom. There is an optical zoom and there is a digital zoom. An optical zoom means that by changing the zoom, you're moving glasses, internal parts inside your lens. So there is no change in the quality or the resolution of your image. On the other hand, digital zoom is like taking a picture but cutting out the periphery and only using a tiny piece of it. Whenever you use a digital zoom, you actually delete a part of the image and use computer power to make it look like you did it. The result is a worse looking picture. Now you might be wondering, how do I know which zoom I'm using? Is it optical or is it digital? In general, phone camera zoom is digital. This is the lousy kind of zoom, okay? Newer phones have some optic zoom capabilities, such as a 2x zoom, which is optic, but the zoom beyond that, 2.1, 3x, 4x, etc., will be a digital zoom. You can Google your phone name and model and type optic zoom right next to it to know whether or not you have any optic zoom capabilities with your phone. But my advice to you is simple. Zoom with your feet. In other words, just get closer to your subject and you will achieve much more resolution and picture quality with the zoom. So that was Photography 101, basics of photography. And now in the second section of our video, we'll talk about how to take it to the next level, and let's discuss professional photography. First off, let's talk about macro photography. Then we'll move on to talk about portrait images. And again, we'll discuss zoom in the professional photography realm. So, macro photography. If you're using macro to take pictures outside, outdoors, such as flowers or small animals, you probably have good lighting and a macro lens is more than enough to achieve great pictures. However, suppose your macro photography involves limited lighting, such as surgical site photography or dental clinical scenarios. You're shooting pictures in a black hole. In this case, I advise you to invest in a good dedicated flash like a ring flash. A cheap ring flash will ruin your images, okay? Your images represent your professional identity. You really don't want to save money on that. So you want to invest in your flash. For me, I've been using the same Canon MR14EX2, this is the name, macro ring light flash, which is right here. I'll get to it when we get to the third section of our video, where I walk you through my equipment. I've been using the same macro ring flash since 2016. It has served me well and I'm still using it. I don't even consider replacing it. It's a very, very good investment. So this is macro images and investing in a macro lens. Portrait images. For those who shoot portraits with a ring flash, I highly recommend you just try other methods. Ring flash is not intended to take portrait images, and a ring flash is designed to shed light inside a very limited area, and a portrait photo has a much larger area. So what are your options? First option, if you have flash built into your camera, then just use it. I'm not referring to a phone camera, I'm referring to a professional camera. Inside a professional camera, you can just take the flash and move it with your index finger, and then the flash will bounce off the ceiling and not directly at your subject. The second option is to invest in a dedicated flash. I use the Canon Speedlight 430EX2 flash. I use it to bounce light off the ceiling. It also has a small card to partly bounce the light into the pupils, the eyes of the subject. This way, some of the light will be bounced off the room and some of it will lighten up the eyes, which just looks great in the pictures. You will know that you achieved excellent flash photography when your image shows evenly spread light, minimal shadows, and small white dots in the middle of your subject eyes, right in the center of the pupils. Then you know you got excellent lighting. I use the Canon Speedlight 430EX2. I use the same one since 2016. I don't even consider replacing it as well. Again, I think it's a very good investment for someone who takes portraits. Lastly, the zoom. We already touched zoom beforehand. We talked about zooming with your feet. So the saying goes here, professional photography, you want to zoom your feet. But if you use a dedicated camera with the zoom lens, you rotate the rings and achieve zoom and optical zoom. You can do it however you want. You're not going to lose quality if you use a zoom lens. Some clinicians already use a dedicated camera with a macro lens and they take portrait pictures with a macro lens, which is perfectly fine. You just need to position yourself at a specific distance from your subject and of course, use not the ring flash for portraits, use a dedicated flash or bounce the built-in flash inside your camera to the ceiling. Now, let's discuss your budget. If you want to take great pictures and you don't want to spend too much money, your first option, if you already have a phone, the first and cheapest option is to use the phone as your camera. Remember to take care of the lighting, zoom with your feet, and don't use the phone flash ever, never. This video actually is being recorded with a camera of my iPhone mini 12, okay, which is a great camera. Your second and more expensive option is to invest in a dedicated camera. You can start with a basic camera and a fixed zoom but high quality lens. So depending on your needs, you can choose 24mm, 35mm lens, 50 or 85. It means you can't zoom with your lens, but the lens is a very high quality, not as expensive to achieve these results. And your third and most expensive option is to invest in more expensive gear. In my experience, to achieve high quality images, the lens is far more important than the camera body. If I would recommend you how to invest your money, first, invest in your lens. Second, in a dedicated high quality flash. And the third is the body of camera. That was the budget, and that brings us to the last part of this video where I want to introduce you to my camera gear and give you some tips and tricks about professional photography. Okay, third part and last part, let's talk about my camera gear. Let's start with the camera. The camera has the camera body, the lens, and the flash. The camera body that I use nowadays is the Canon RP. The lens that I'm using, again, will be linked down below, and I touched on it in the previous section, is the Canon Macro 100L 2.8 lens. I've been using the same lens for 7 years, since 2016. And the ring flash, again, will be linked down below, and I touched on the specifications beforehand, is the same ring flash I've been using for the last 7 years. Camera body. So this is the Canon RP. I moved into the Canon RP from the Canon 5D Mark III about a year ago. The reason for that was mainly to move into the mirrorless versus mirrored DSLR or mirrored camera. The advantages are that it has a rotating touchscreen. So when I take pictures, I don't need to look in the viewfinder. I can even hold it from above and change the rotating screen so I can see what I'm taking a picture of. The touchscreen, of course, allows me to focus on specific points of the subject, and the picture taking is much faster. It's a much cheaper option compared to the Canon 5D. The Canon 5D has a much better dynamic range, which is a specific measure of quality of a camera. But although the dynamic range is not as good as the 5D, it has many advantages, and it allows me to take pictures fast in the OR and position myself, which is very important because you only have a few seconds to take a picture in the OR. You don't have the luxury of positioning your subject or anything like that. And that's the difference between taking a picture or not taking it at all. So that's the Canon RP. More advantages are it allows me to wirelessly transfer my images. I don't need to take out the memory card and transfer it to the computer. So this is why I moved to the Canon RP over the Canon 5D, which I nowadays use for portraits. The lens. The lens is the macro lens. It's the Canon 100L 2.8 macro lens. I've been using the same lens ever since 2016. This is a wonderful, wonderful lens. It has an inner image stabilization mechanism. So if I'm standing, in the OR and try to position my camera at a very specific area without disturbing anything in the OR, any movement that I do because of my very, very difficult positioning is being stabilized inside the lens, which is great. Ring flash, specifications down below, and I touched on it before, same ring flash since 2016. This is my go-to every single day camera gear that I take to the clinic, that I take to the OR, and I highly recommend this, this setup. In addition, let's touch on you can nearly miss the tiny specifications when you look for a lens. So you will see that there are lenses which are 2.8 versus lenses which are 4.0. The 2.8 usually cost twice as much, but have a much better way of taking advantage of the lighting in the room, which is extremely important in clinical photography. And the L series of lenses compared to the lenses of Canon that don't have the L, there is a huge, huge advantage of the L series over the non-L series. If you're looking into buying a lens, just pay attention to these specifications. Over on my Canon 5D Mark III, which I don't have right here, but I use the old Canon 5D for portraits. This way I don't need to change lenses and change the flash when I take different kind of pictures. So the Canon 5D Mark III has a zoom lens, the Canon 24-70L 2.8 lens, which is a perfect lens for taking portraits and family pictures, a great lens. I also have the 70-200. All these specifications are in my newsletter about photography, which will be linked down below. And also the portrait flash, which I touched before, and is also on my Canon 5D Mark III portrait camera. Final thoughts. RAW versus JPEG images. You want to make sure that all the images that you take are taken both in the RAW format and JPEG. JPEG is a compressed format, meaning you're losing data. The RAW format allows you to correct white balance, shadows, and as time goes by, you can even go back to old images that you took, and if you took them in a RAW format, you can correct them, okay, with better and newer software. So always shoot your images both RAW and JPEG. Mirrorless versus mirror cameras. So as time goes by, there are less and less mirrored cameras. Mirrored cameras are the old-fashioned cameras. They produce great results, but are heavier and they don't have a lot of advantages that mirrorless cameras nowadays have. And I highly recommend you just go with mirrorless cameras and not mirrored camera. Manual versus autofocus. So on my Canon 5D Mark III, I only used the manual focus because I wasn't able to use the autofocus when I'm taking macro images. But once I transitioned into the Canon RP, the new mirrorless camera, I'm now using macro images with autofocus. It works perfect and it allows me to take picture in 2 seconds in the OR. Perfect images every single time. So this is a huge advantage and I highly recommend that you move into the autofocus once you have the proper camera to take advantage of this characteristic. Controlling the aperture versus letting the camera choosing it for you. I highly recommend that you start choosing the aperture and define it to the camera. Don't let the camera choose these parameters for you. Nowadays, I take my pictures full manual, meaning I control the aperture, I control the speed, and I control the ISO. It allows me to take the picture consistently well. In the beginning, I was worried I won't be able to change all this fast and take the good pictures in the OR. Nowadays, I have enough confidence after the years that I'm taking clinical pictures all the time that I can change all these numbers on the go, on the fly, and in a few seconds, I correct it in the OR. I highly recommend you start doing it. As for the parameters to start with, let's see here. So I'm using the speed of 80, the aperture of 29, and the ISO of 160. These are my manual settings that I use in the OR, of course, together with the ring flash. And I think this is a very good starting point for you to take your clinical photography with. And I think this is it. So we touched on basic photography, professional photography, and also touched my own professional camera gear. If you have any questions, feel free to comment where the links are down below, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.